You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, and Spotify, and like Stables Media on Facebook. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there. And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, Primetime Edition on Stables Media. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Ed Smith and Frank Vasner, who just returned. Darren Weiss is out. Ed Smith, how was your week, and how are you doing tonight?
Feeling good. Feeling very good. Another week in the books, another week closer to Election Day. So that's my purpose, that's my strength, that's my motivation getting me through. And I'm feeling good so far.
Definitely. Me too. Frank, how about you?
Well, I survived a prime week working at Amazon, and of course, tonight I had to officiate a middle school football game. A little bit sore after that, but I'm feeling pretty well.
Awesome. So before we get started, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports app called Viget, which influences more and more people to love sports. Enter the referral code STABLES with a capital S at the beginning. Download the Viget app and enter the referral code STABLES. Got Lions, Michigan, and Michigan State to preview, Lions and Jaguars to recap, plus our TMSTP Story Vault, a very, very, very long article about the 2014 Detroit Tigers autopsy written by Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag. But first off, the Lions beat the Jaguars 34-16 in Jacksonville. DeAndre Swift, 14 carries for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, 223 passing yards, 1 touchdown throw to T.J. Hawkinson on 4th down and 1 interception. Stafford has now scored against all 31 other NFL teams except the Lions, the team he's on. Kenny Golladay, 4 catches for 105 receiving yards. Jaguars were missing 2 defensive linemen, and the Lions' offensive line took advantage. The defensive front obviously stopped the run on rookie James Robinson, and the secondary defense showed up for Detroit as well. Jeff Okudah led the entire team in tackles with 8. Yeah, 8 tackles for Jeff Okudah. My, oh my.
Nice
goodness.
On the rookie.
Dang right. Jamie Collins Sr. was 7. So the truth is, the Lions took good care of a horrible Jaguars team. It's no wonder urinating Treat calls them Saxonville, like I just mentioned before. The Lions still have plenty of talent on their roster, and that's why. But we already know they can beat horrible teams like the Jaguars, but only them. They got the Falcons up next, and we'll preview them afterwards. So we're going to go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, your thoughts on the game?
My thoughts on this game were this was a battle of 2 teams that essentially are already battling for the bottom, if you were to say so. This is a Jacksonville Jaguars team that has clearly fallen from their own built upon hype from just a couple of short years ago when they were beating the Steelers in the playoffs and were looking to challenge the Patriots for supremacy in the AFC. They have fallen off of that pedestal very fast and very hard. Most notably the fact that they've dismantled and taken and sent away some variable pieces, namely Leonard Fournette, who probably could have been badly needed against this Lions defense, and also most importantly, Jalen Ramsey, their best cornerback, arguably their best player on their entire team, one of the best corners in the entire league. He was unhappy, disgruntled, and you know how that deal goes, so they traded him to Los Angeles. And so, again, another player whose absence was deeply felt in this game against Detroit. That's why you saw Kenny Golladay go off and have a big day for 105 yards. That's why you saw Matthew Stafford having a somewhat efficient game, not his best game, I would say. And quite frankly, to be honest, as much as I am a fan of Stafford, I got to admit that he has not been, his usual self. The way that I know he can be at his best, at least through the early part of the season, where He's putting in better numbers, but also more importantly, is just looks better in general with his decision making, with his throws, the way he carries himself on the field. I don't know if this is a lingering issue of recovering from back-to-back seasons where it gets ended by a debilitating back injury. I don't know if he's trying to shake off the rust from that, or if it's play calling, but something doesn't quite feel all the way right with Stafford. But again, moving on to that, the main takeaway should be the emergence, or I would say the breakout of DeAndre Swift, showing a glimpse of the potential that he has with that 100-plus yard day on the ground and 2 touchdowns, and bursting out a 54-yard run against a depleted and battered Jacksonville defense. Seeing him perform like that would at least give credence to something that I've been saying for a while, that if you give Matthew Stafford at least a competent, we're not asking for, a number 1 5-star, but at least a competent, adequate level of rushing attack and running game and running the ball, which will get you first downs, which will get you long extended drives, which will take away the clock, and will set up Matthew Stafford in situations where you can throw the ball better and under better situations, whether it be play action or whether it be going deep, because the threat of the run is there. It gives you, at least it puts the defense in a bad spot. So that is an example of what a potential improvement upon the running game can do for the Lions offense as a whole, and most importantly for Matthew Stafford. If there's one thing I can notice, at least schematically, was that there was less man coverage and more zone. Now, I think that's probably due to the fact that you're facing Gardner Minshew and not say Aaron Rodgers, but they showed much better improvements this week. They didn't rely heavily on man coverage. And I think really, when you think about it, if you're going to rely on man coverage, that would lead you to believe that you have some type of presence on the defensive line that can get to the quarterback. The Lions do not have that at all, which essentially means you're going to be leaving your secondaries on islands all throughout the field. So, granted, I know you can't do zone on every single play because eventually that's going to get spied on, eyed about, picked on, and picked apart just bit by bit throughout the game. But you got to mix things up. You can't keep showing the same defense on every single play. But also, you got to take account of that for the weaknesses and strengths that you have. You don't have a strong pass rush. You have a couple of good corners, but that's it. You don't have that thoroughbred linebacker. You like to keep drafting slow ones. Otherwise, you would have had a good one if you had taken, oh my goodness, his name is escaping me, Devin Bush. If you had taken Devin Bush, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But you didn't, so your defense is what it is. But they were at least to get some takeaways, get some turnovers, which is always beneficial because it takes pressure. It pumps up the team, and depending on when you commit the turnover, it could put your offense in a good spot field position-wise, where they can add on more points. Not to mention how debilitating it is to the other team. So good job on them winning the takeaway battle, knowing when to use man coverage, knowing when to use zone defense, and the emergence of DeAndre Swift to take the pressure off Matthew Stafford. Those were my takeaways from that win, albeit against a very bad football team.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of Devin Bush was injured, and I think he's out for the season, isn't he?
Oh, crap. Is he now?
Yeah, yes, he is. He tore his ACL.
Oh, God. Oh.
Man, that's not good.
Get well soon, Devin, because that is a talent that is. I saw what he did for Pittsburgh last season. He is their perfect replacement for Ryan Shazier and then some. So that's tough, man. That's a big blow. Big blow for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Urinating Tree is not happy about it either.
I'm just disappointed for Devin because he, I just don't want this to hurt his career.
Yep, understandable. Frank, follow up.
Well, obviously I wasn't able to watch this game because of working on Sunday, but I did kind of check some highlights and all. So, kind of echo what Ed said. The running game was a lot better. DeAndre Swift with a 100-yard game. I believe that's the first 100-yard game in a long time for an individual rusher, if I'm not mistaken.
Since Kerryon Johnson 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I knew Kerryon had one somewhat recently, but I just couldn't remember when exactly it was. So, DeAndre Swift kind of having that breakout game. Hope that's a sign of things to come for him as well down the road. Matthew Stafford was all right, wasn't anything spectacular. So, I mean, maybe he is still dealing with those lingering effects from his back injury. And, I mean, defensively, kind of is what it is. You're going against Gardner Minshew, who is far from great in this league. So you pretty much went and did your job and took care of a team that you were supposed to beat. Now, obviously, in the games coming up against Atlanta, who is awful in their own right, plus I believe they've got the Vikings coming up, who lost to Atlanta as well. This is basically just granting a stay of execution for Quinn Trisha, as they have a bunch of garbage teams coming up that they'll probably end up beating more than likely, but we'll just see what happens down the road.
I mean, you play who's in front of you, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him lose one of these supposedly gimmies. To piggyback off of what Frank was talking about in regards with the running game, I did forget to mention, first and foremost, by the way, with aside from the output that Kerryon Johnson had a couple years ago, that was like one of the few times that the Lions have had a 100-yard or a game where a running back went over 100 yards rushing. Before Kerryon Johnson did it and before DeAndre Swift did it, it was Reggie Bush way back in 2013. That's 7 years, okay? So you talk about how dreadful the Lions have had in setting up a secondary offensive attack to be, be a backup for what their primary aerial assault will be. That's that stat in a nutshell. And also, another stat that further encompasses this point in a nutshell, that is now the 12th game in Matthew Stafford's career where he had a running back rush over 100 yards. The record in those games, 10-2. So that alone should tell you that if you give Matthew Stafford at least a competent running game, he can win you football games.
So can the Lions.
Exactly.
So that brings us to Lions at Falcons in Atlanta, Sunday at 1 on Fox. And we're going to go ahead and analyze that game right about now. First, we'll go to Ed, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, any analysis on Lions and Falcons? What's your scouting report on the Falcons?
Scouting report on the Falcons is that this is a team in absolute free fall right now. They're 1-5. They have blown lead after blown lead. Their efficiency is just absolutely downright frightening when you believe it. When you think about it, in terms of overall efficiency, it's just not there. They may have some flashy numbers, flashy stats, Matt Ryan putting up numbers, but when you're 1-5, what can you do? What can you say? It just speaks for itself. You had to fire your coach in the middle of the season. I wish a certain other team would take notice, but they won't. And just given the general morale, it just speaks to how in perpetual free fall this team is right now. And frankly, the Lions are just a hair sliver of that away from being in that free fall themselves. Because remember, they just only got their second win this past weekend. So there's nothing, as much as people want to start, putting on the stove that hot Lions cornbread and getting their cups ready to drink some Kool-Aid, this is a 2-3 football team for a reason. And even if they somehow get to 3 or 4 wins by the time they hit the middle of November, they're not really that good of a team. And the numbers and the teams that they're facing, the level of competition that they're facing shows for itself. We've seen what happens when they go up against a legitimate team. They get punched and smacked, like we saw against the Packers. 14-point leads are cute, but when you have Aaron Rodgers, anything is possible. And Matt Ryan is no Aaron Rodgers, but I still consider him a stout enough and solid QB in this league to where he knows what to do against a defense that is as porous as the Lions. So hopefully Matthew Stafford can shake things off and have another one of his vintage games, but we'll see how that happens. I think the team, we know how Atlanta can establish the run. They have a well-balanced offensive tackle, by the way. It's not just Matt Ryan airing out to Julio Jones. They got some good quality running backs, a good quality running game as well. Way better than what the Lions are used to producing. So, to me, that would be the key if you're Atlanta trying to establish the run, because you know how bad Detroit has been against the run so far this year. The only reason Jacksonville didn't do it, really, to be honest, Leonard Fournette is gone. So once that advantage was gone, so was Jacksonville's chance of winning that game. If you're Atlanta, you have a much better chance because I think you are a better running team than what the Jaguars are. And also, this is a chance for you to build up your own morale. If you think that there's still some hope left in this season, then you started by getting a win. Granted, it's not in front of your home, a full raucous home crowd, but it's at home regardless. You're still defending your turf. If you have any semblance of hope and pride in your season or you as an organization, this is a game you have to win. You have to come out with a desperate intensity that you need to win this game, regardless of what the record says. So that'll be interesting to see the energy, the output, the body language that each team will start out with. If whoever comes out more fired up or whoever comes out the opposite at the beginning, I think could be a fair tell warning of how this game will go. That being said, it's hard to really tell how this game could go. This game could really go either way. I could see either team blowing a lead because we've seen it happen multiple times on both sides. I could even see it happening in a tie because we just saw the Lions end up in a tie last year. Who's to say they can't do it again against another team that's equally as bad as them, if not worse. And, that's really the gist of it. But if I were to pick a winner, I guess give more false hope sense to Quinn and Patricia by beating, quite frankly, imploding Falcons team by a hangnail. So what? I guess I'm just gonna fly by the seat of my pants at this one. I'll just say Lions 29, Falcons 24.
All right, Frank, how about you? It's your turn.
I mean, honestly, when I think about this one, look, Matt Ryan is not Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, but he's also a hell of a lot better than Gardner Minshew is. And Atlanta also has a stronger running game, as that alluded to. And, of course, it's not just Julio Jones, who Matt Ryan's going to be throwing the ball to. They also have Calvin Ridley as well. And if the Lions end up playing a zone defense, again, I don't know if that's going to slow those two guys down or if they'll go man-to-man and possibly risk having Trufant and Jeff Okudah on islands. But also, I do not trust this Atlanta team at all. They are more talented, but again, they were just poorly coached, and it resulted in Dan Quinn and their GM, Thomas Dimitroff, getting the axe, which I wish would happen to another GM coach duo, but I'll save that for later. But anyway, for some reason, I just have a feeling this is a game that the Lions will somehow win, lucking into one, by hook or by crook. I'll go 26-23, Lions win on a Matt Prater field goal.
I'm just worried and scared that this is going to drum up idiotic portions of the fan base are saying, hey, man, there's still hope for that second playoff spot. That second wild card still available.
That's something any slapdick fan would say.
Be prepared to hear that. Trust me, if they win 2 of these next 3 games, be prepared to hear that.
Yeah.
This whole stretch of upcoming games is fairly winnable because they have to play the Vikings, who just lost to the same Atlanta Falcons team. And, I don't have the rest of the schedule in front of me, but I do
They got Washington, and they got the Panthers. And they got the Texans. They got the Texans on Thanksgiving. Oh, my God.
Yeah, and those 3, they have a bunch of
who no longer
teams.
have Bill O'Brien, though.
Still, they don't got DeAndre Hopkins either, so...
No, absolutely not.
Our worst fear is pretty much that the Lions win all these games against these dumpster fire teams, and then Quinn and Patricia get brought back, which we absolutely don't want to happen.
I'm willing to bet you they're going to be sitting at around 500 or so come Thanksgiving, and a chance, and there'll be a couple games within, or if not near, that second playoff spot. I guarantee you that is going to be seen as the must-win game of the season. Watch. Pinpoint this down, bookmark this, and come back to me in about a month and tell me if I'm not right or wrong on that.
At least I'll be watching.
Well, and I'll buy what you're saying 100%.
Well, Darren Weiss has got a bold prediction right before we went pre-recording this episode. Darren will pick the Falcons to win 35-24. Therefore, I'm going to range this and say Falcons 27, Lions 26.
Honestly, man, if the Falcons weren't just absolute dog doo-doo and protecting leads this year, I would pick them. But I just don't have confidence in them. I can't.
Right.
I'm in the same boat as Ed.
Right, because the Lions have a little bit more talent than the Falcons do, although the Falcons have a much better running game than the Jaguars, like you guys pointed out. And it'll be a challenge for the Lions' defensive front to stop that run because they haven't done so until they reach Jacksonville. Think about that. So it's been a long time coming, but it's now finally time for some college football in the mid. We'll start with the Michigan State Spartans, and then we'll go to the Michigan Wolverines. The Spartans play at home against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights Saturday at noon on BTN. Michigan State freshman linebackers Luke Fulton and Charles Wilkes were suspended after being arrested last month. But Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Other than those 2 linebackers that were suspended, any analysis on Michigan State and Rutgers? I know Rutgers has been known for being a really terrible college football team,
Rutgers is Rutgers. That's the analysis. But in all seriousness, it is interesting to see how game 1 of the Mel Tucker era will go. Granted, I'm sure Tucker could have wished for better circumstances than this. I'm sure we all could have wished for that. But it is what it is. You got to deal with the hand you're dealt with. But I want to see how his feel for the game, how he coaches the players, how he talks to his or communicates with his staff, how he sets up his players in the right spots, how he's going to handle certain duties when it comes to certain aspects of the offense. I'll get to that in a bit. But I want to see also, the key to me is to see how MSU is going to do this season as a success in general, is how well is their offense going to do? Because we know what their defense is going to bring. Their defense is going to have them in damn near every single game this entire season. It all comes down to whether or not their offense can execute the simple fundamentals in terms of moving the football down the field, whether it be not calling the same predictable running play on first down every single time, whether it be not trying to throw the ball 4 or 5 yards on an end route when you need 8 to get the first down, whether it be your quarterback not making careless mistakes or at least knowing what the hell he's doing on the field. And that's another thing. You need better QB play. You have not seen it really translate too well. You have not seen quality play from under center the past couple of years. I think that's namely due to the fact that you had a pretty shoddy offensive line. And when you have a bad O-line, it's hard to keep a QB in a productive state, no matter how good he is. Yeah, it's just hard to do that in general. So between all of that and, of course, the horrendous play calling that was going on and that was being allowed to go on by Mark D'Antonio were the biggest catalysts and the biggest reasons as to why MSU had the seasons that they had, because it started and ended with their offense. And once that spiraled out of control, it affected the mood of the entire team, and it was just a lost cause after that. So I want to see how the Mel Tucker era goes. Or how it starts off, because there's always that air of anticipation that, hey, how's this first game going to go? We saw it with Hope, we saw it with Harbaugh. We want to see how it goes with Tucker. Better QB play, and this can tie back into point one, but I want to see how the play calling goes. I want to see how different Mel Tucker is and is going to be from Mark D'Antonio.
All right, so Ed, what is your prediction between Michigan State and Rutgers?
MSU should win this game, at least by 2 scores. If you keep this close with this team in any semblance of form or fashion, I will disrespect you for the rest of the season, and I'm not joking about that. And if you lose, may God have mercy on you. But I'm going to pick MSU for the sake of their sanity and for mine, and say they'll win this one. It'll look ugly early, but I think they'll pull away throughout the game, and they'll win by 31-10.
All right. Frank Vasner, now it's your turn. Any scoop on MSU and Rutgers?
Well, I'll kind of echo what Ed said. I'm looking to see how they're going to do offensively. I mean, Jay Johnson, their offensive coordinator, said to do more multiple looks, so that's probably going to mean not very often, if at all, they'll see the 22 personnel, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, which I hope they don't see, or run up the middle on first down, or, God forbid, that they call a short side jet sweep. I am traumatized enough. No, Ed, seriously, I am traumatized enough by that. So hopefully I don't see that happen. Otherwise, I will be in deep trouble. We'll just leave it at that. But in all seriousness, I am looking to see how the quarterback play will be. From what I've heard, Rocky Lombardi is going to be the starter. But does this mean he's going to be the starter throughout the season? I've heard people say this Peyton Thorne kid has been getting a lot of reps with the ones as well, and he's been turning some heads, so there's a possibility we could see him get some action as well, and maybe later on down the season he takes a starting job, because I haven't been that sold on Rocky, but maybe he put some serious work in and busted his ass to get better in the offseason. And plus, I'm also looking for a strong game from Elijah Collins. He's going to have to be the workhorse running back. He's a reliable option. And, of course, defensively, obviously there's a lot of stars that are gone. Kenny Willekes gone. Plus, I'm also looking for a guy like Antoine Simmons to step up and be a leader on defense. And Xavier Henderson, a leader in the secondary. I mean, I think this is a game that'll look kind of ugly at first. I mean, if they win by 2 scores or less, then, Ed, I will let you have free reign on not respecting them at all. Yeah, go ahead, chuckle away all you want. But I will
you're going to hear more than chuckling if they lose.
I will, dude. I will let you.
More like urinating tree laughter.
Oh.
I will add you. I know you're a Michigan fan, and as much as I will hate to hear it from that fan base, I will allow you to have free reign just because you are the exception, not the rule. But anyways, I think they will pull away because Rutgers is a god-awful football team. I think there are some probably high school teams in this area that might be able to beat them, but I digress. I'll say Michigan State wins this one 34-13.
Yeah, and Darren picks the Spartans to beat Rutgers 17-10 in a close one.
Ooh.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Ooh.
Oh, my God.
Imagine.
I hope that does not.
Holy-
I hope that does not happen.
Imagine.
Yeah. I'm going to say 24-10. I'm going to say 24-10 just for the sake of it. I don't want to make it sound like a blowout, although I would like to predict 38-10. Yeah, it should be. I'm going to go ahead and pick 38-10 as my second prediction. My first prediction, 24-10. My second prediction, 38-10. Yeah, I'm setting the table right now. So the Michigan Wolverines are at the Minnesota Golden Gophers Saturday at 7:30 on ABC. Michigan is actually a 3-point underdog according to the Viget app. So Minnesota is favored by 3. Wide receiver Nico Collins is no longer on the team because he signed with an agent in September. So, but the Wolverines still have plenty of other weapons, such as Charbonnet.
Yeah, Charbonnet's there.
Yep. Definitely.
I mean, granted, they've lost some weapons throughout the course of the off season. You know, it sucked losing guys like Tariq Black. Nico Collins was a senior anyway, but I think it was a really big blow losing Tariq Black the way we did. Now you got to look at other guys, see if they're going to step up as well. Ronnie Bell, maybe a name that gets his name called. We'll see. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that's my biggest question mark for, if not just this offense, but this entire team. How well is the receiving core? I mean, yeah, the QB can take the blame or the credit for how he does in the game and how the team does, but it comes down to, can your receivers help you out in spots where only you can put the ball for them to catch? And that's what it comes down to. And I want to see if Joe Milton, more than likely, since he's probably going to be the starter anyway, if it hasn't been announced yet, I want to see who he's going to find as his primary weapon, as his weapon. Who's going to lock on to? Who's he going to connect with? You know, could it be Shonel? Could be Nate Shonel? It could be Ronnie Bell. It could be one of the tight ends. You're never certain. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting scenario to see play out. In terms for the rest of the storylines, or however you want to call it, I really want to see who makes the better adjustments between Harbaugh and Fleck. Fleck, I think, is going to have his players damn sure motivated for this game, COVID or no COVID. And Michigan better be prepared to have an absolute death battle on their hands here, because this Minnesota team in recent years has given them quite a good number, a couple of scares. I think quite remember, I think it was 2015 or 16, the last time they visited the Gophers, it went right down to the literal last play of the game. That's how serious it is. That's how important it is in terms of winning a game like this, especially, forget about the Little Brown Jug for a second. This is a chance to establish what you can do in the conference. Now, I keep forgetting, I don't know if Michigan and Minnesota are in the same division or not, but
they are not.
They are not.
They're
okay.
Minnesota's in the West Division.
Right. I always got to remember, Minnesota, Wisconsin, same division. So there's that. But, hey, this could be a potential preview of what a Big Ten championship game could look like, depending on how the season goes for each of these teams. Assuming Minnesota actually does the improbable and wins their division, and Michigan actually does the unthinkable and wins the division by likely beating Ohio State. Again, I'm not predicting either to happen, frankly, but we'll see what happens. So it's interesting to see how that will go. I really want to see how Joe Milton does, and essentially his debut, his introduction to America, if you will. Because he's probably going to get the start. This is a primetime game, so with Fowler and Herbie on the call, this is going to get one of the main spotlights of the entire weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how he does under that pressure, whether it be fans there or not. And I also want to see who establishes their strength first between what Harbaugh's bringing, what Fleck is bringing to the table, with knowing how Minnesota can get the ball throughout the air. Yes, Tyler Johnson is gone, but they still have good quality replacements in that wide receiving core. And I want to see how that's going to do against this Michigan defense. Could it be a preview of what they can do at their best potential? I want to see how this Michigan defense can reload. Not necessarily rebuild, but reload. Obviously, you have more confidence. I would like to hope that you have more confidence in the defense as opposed to the offense, but we'll see how it goes. And for Michigan's side of things, I just hope that Harbaugh continues to let the offense be its own being, be its own thing, to where it doesn't need his handicapping play calling on certain aspects or certain moments. Just let Josh Gaddis do his job, let the players do what they're supposed to do, and you just help out on making sure we have A, good defense, B, our running game is solid and established, and C, our quarterback is comfortable enough to where he can make good plays. If you check all those boxes, you're probably going to walk out here with a win. And to me, I think this is going to be a knockdown slugfest. This could go very well down to the last drive, as it seems to be with these teams as of late. But I do see Michigan do just enough to squeak out a win. I'm going to say it'll be ugly, but I say Michigan gets it done 27-23.
All right. Frank, what say you on Michigan and Minnesota?
Well, this is a very interesting game. I mean, for Minnesota, they return arguably the best quarterback in the Big Ten, not named Justin Fields and Tanner Morgan. So, I mean, he's going to be a name to watch. And Ed alluded to Minnesota's wide receivers. Tyler Johnson, obviously now in the National Football League. But they do have Rashad Bateman back, who is expected to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. And, of course, with Michigan not having Ambry Thomas back, that would be a big area of concern for me if I was a Michigan fan. How are they going to slow Bateman down now that their best cover corner is no longer there? And plus, Minnesota, I mean, obviously, Minnesota is going to be breaking in a new offensive coordinator, as well as Kurt Soraka is now at Penn State with James Franklin. So, I mean, what I'm looking for is, can Joe Milton win a game on the road in his first start if he is the assumed starter? And can he back up all the talk? Because everything I've heard, there's a lot of people say, oh, well, he can throw a ball 80 yards on his knees, or he's like Patrick Mahomes and Peyton Manning rolling the one.
I mean,
Stop the talk and back it up with results, okay?
Yeah,
and I'm sure you'll agree with me with that.
Yeah, because we've heard the promises that we've hyped up our QBs before in the past. We were hyping up Patterson before he took his first snap. He did, overall in the end, in hindsight, he did okay, but he did not nowhere near live up to the expectations that we as Michigan fans were hyping up on him, and I'm guilty of that as well. Trust me, I was the one, having fever dreams of Shane Morris is going to win the Heisman and the Rose Bowl in the same year, and boy, you should have seen what this player did. So I'm not going to, proclaim and crown Joe Milton yet, even though, which is funny, I did compare him to Cam Newton last week on this show. But I want to see how Joe does. If he does well enough, I'll feel satisfied. I won't go fully in mode, but I'll be very satisfied by how he does.
Yeah, I mean, obviously establishing the running game, too, with Zach Charbonnet and Hassan Haskins, if he is still on the team. I do remember him playing well last year.
Well, if you know with Harbaugh, he's going to want to establish the run at any cost. So I think you should be quite content in knowing that. And I think with how Michigan in general has been effective with running the ball under Harbaugh's tenure, they've been consistent enough to where you feel confident that they can establish something early in the game that can get their offense churning and also allows their quarterback to manage the game, be more calm, and also get the next chain of order set up to where, hey, if you go to a play action down the line, or hey, do a RPO keeper, or hey, here's a quick throw out to your safety valve, whether it be a tight end or over the middle or whatever. Those little plays, those little things, those little instances, little by little, in a chain, combined together, sets up to how well and efficient your quarterback and in turn your offense is going to perform. So if you establish the run, you're already off to a good start.
Yes, definitely.
But also, I think what Minnesota's going to do is they're going to try and make Joe Milton win the game for Michigan. They're like, we're going to put it on his shoulders and be like, okay, kid, this is your first start. We're gonna make you go out and win this. Mm-hmm. And plus, I want to know if Michigan's gonna have somebody to stop Rashad Bateman, and which is still a bit of an unknown. And I think this is going to be a pretty close game as well. But given the fact that until I see Michigan actually stop an NFL prospect wide receiver and best quarterback in the conference, not named Justin Fields, and also beat a ranked team on the road, which is something that they have struggled to do, I unfortunately am going to have to go with the Golden Gophers to win by a score of, I'll say, 24-20.
I can see this playing out similar to what we saw against Utah in that season opener, Harbaugh's first year, and was it a couple years ago against Notre Dame. I could see it playing out similar to that aspect of where they make mistakes early. It's an ugly game, but they still have a shot of winning it at the end. Maybe hopefully this time the gods will be on our side. But I could definitely see Minnesota stacking the box and saying, listen, only way you're beating us is with that arm. We're taking away your legs, and we're taking away your running back's legs. You want to beat us? Throw at us.
All right. So Darren predicts Michigan to beat Minnesota 34-31. I'm going to say Minnesota 30-28. So both sides are even here.
Split, by the way, split panel, but also consistent on one end. We are expecting this to be a close game.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely.
I agree. I would be shocked if it's a blowout either way.
Right. So it's time for our TMSTP Story Vault from Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag on October 6, 2014. Headlining the Detroit Tigers 2014 autopsy. And this is going to be a long one. I'm going to split this into three parts. So we're going to pause and talk about each and every single one of those three parts. So Moss writes, I'm a huge mark for movies that begin at the end and then work their way back to that final scene over the next 2 hours or so. And I don't care if it's a classic film like Pulp Fiction or an average time filler like Competence. I am a total sucker for this bit of storytelling chicanery. The reason I am bringing this up today is that if you were to produce a movie of the 2014 Detroit Tigers season, you'd have to go all Quentin Tarantino and begin with the following scene. The Tigers on the verge of elimination, down 0-2 in the ALDS with a runner on second base, nobody out, and needing at least one run to extend the season into extra innings. A franchise with an approximate payroll of $165 million, the Tigers' season is hanging in the balance, and Brian Holiday and Hernan Perez are being called upon by Brad or Bad Ausmus to salvage the season. Seriously, imagine for a moment that you knew nothing about the 2014 Detroit baseball team, and before the opening credits even rolled, this is what you were dropped into. With lefty Orioles closer Zach Britton on the mound, the narrator explains to the audience that the Tigers' backup catcher had a .380 OPS versus Southpaws in 2014. And when that loser predictably couldn't lay down a bunt and strike out, the next potential savior was a weak-hitting middle infielder who only had 5 at-bats in the major leagues this season. How did we get to this point? What could have transpired over the last 11-plus months since their last postseason debacle at Fenway Park, for example, that the Tigers' fate was being determined by Holiday and Perez? And there's the rub. All this could have been avoided. There was no reason the 2014 season had to end like this. Almost all the contributing factors to the Tigers' elimination yesterday were inflicted by either Dave Dombrowski or Brad Ausmus. It's the reason why neither should have a job with the organization when this team heads to Lakeland in February. How could a team with the last 3 AL Cy Young Award winners, Miguel Cabrera, Victor Martinez, and a gift from heaven in the body of J.D. Martinez, get swept by a Baltimore team that was missing Manny Machado, Matt Wieters, and Chris Davis? Wow. I mean, Dombrowski has the unmitigated gall to whine about a depleted team because he lost the services of Jose Iglesias, Andy Dirks, and Bruce Rondon. Buck Showalter was managing a squad with arguably 60% of its best offensive contributors watching from a suite. The reckless malpractice from Detroit's GM and his idiotic hand-picked field boss is a story of the season, and it is why this recent era of Tigers baseball will likely end without any World Series jewelry. It's the most devastating waste of talent, funds, competitive advantage, and fan support we have ever seen around these parts. Where do you even begin with the atrocities of Dombrowski and Ausmus? It would be easy to begin with the Doug Fister travesty of last December, but I've already written 25,000 plus words documenting that Holocaust, and I don't even have the energy or the inclination to add to that total. Of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention Pfister's NLDS gem earlier today, where he outdueled San Fran's Madison Bumgarner in typical Doug Pfister fashion. 7 innings pitched, 0 runs allowed, whip of 1. But let me just point out that a team that just got swept by a debilitated Orioles squad, largely due to their anemic bullpen and bench production, probably could have used something in return for one of the top 15 starters in all of baseball. Or how about this? The Tigers gave up approximately 653 runs in the 8th innings of this particular ALDS, each and every single game, that is. Can you imagine trading Pfister, and neither Ian Kroll nor Robbie Ray are able to provide any relief in the 8th inning during the ensuing season? Let me put that in a little context for you. This past June, in the MLB draft, the cute-as-a-button Kansas City Royals drafted pitcher Brandon Finnegan 17th overall. Brandon Finnegan. Finnegan has already made 2 postseason appearances for the Royals, assisting them in knocking out the Angels. In 1 2/3 innings pitched, the for now converted starter has yet to allow a run and actually picked up one of KC's 3 wins. I'm going to spell this out for you. 184 days after the Tigers acquired Kroll and Ray, the Royals drafted a 21-year-old kid who was contributing mightily out of their pen. I mean, Finnegan was ostensibly in Sociology 201 when he found out about the Pfister abortion, and yet he is getting huge outs for the Royals while Ray and Kroll did nothing to contribute. Finnegan is already a more productive bullpen draftee than any of Dombrowski's failed assets of recent years. In just 4 months, he has already surpassed Chance Ruffin, Ryan Perry, Kevin Ziamick, Andy Oliver, Cody Satterwhite, Scott Green, Luke Puckonen, who played for the Tigers, by the way, Cole Green, Kevin Whalen, and Brett Jacobson. I am sure I am missing some of the other Major League ready arms Divot Chin Dave has been bragging about for years, but I figured that partial list was depressing enough. And how about that bullpen, folks? Like, who could have forecasted that Jabbar Chamberlain collapse? Just like, remember, Ed, when Jabbar Chamberlain gave up that 3-run home run to Melky Cabrera to tie the game at 6 in that one game where we ran on Blog Talk Radio? We were only talking about a guy who in 2013 had an ERA of 5.64, a whip of 174, and a predictive fielding independent pitching ratio of 5.64. That was the dude who was pigeonholed into the 8th inning after a good first half of the season and ended up being a total disaster post All-Star break when Ausmus failed to realize Chamberlain's first half was an anomaly. So we're going to pause right there, and we're going to go to Ed and then Frank. So Brian Holiday and Hernan Perez.
No, yeah. just why are you bringing back these bad memories for me? I'm trying to get over it. Okay, I'm trying to get over knowing that was a team that had Miguel Cabrera, Victor Martinez, J.D. Martinez, Justin Verlander, David Price, Max Scherzer, even freaking Porcello, and you couldn't win a playoff game?
Not in 2014, no,
couldn't even win a single damn playoff game with that roster, that payroll. Hell, put me as the manager. I could have done a better job than Brad Ausmus. And you mentioned, oh God, you had to mention 2013 with Boston and the Doug Pfister trick.
Total torture.
Pain, nothing but pain.
Yeah.
You hear it in my voice right now.
Yeah. At least there was somebody available, which Dave Dombrowski could have picked. Finnegan, Brandon Finnegan, 17th overall pick by the Kansas City Royals. And Dave Dombrowski couldn't draft him when he was the general manager of the Tigers.
Here. Let's make this even more torturous for me. You know who they did pick in one of those rounds in that draft in 2014?
Who?
Think about it. Basically, he had a hell of an arm where if he had stayed in the game, he'd probably be one of the best fielders in the game today. He decided to play football instead of baseball. Ladies and gentlemen,
who is Patrick Mahomes?
I am talking about one Patrick freaking Mahomes II. That Patrick Mahomes, Mr. $500 million man himself, Mr. Super Bowl MVP, Mr. League MVP, Mr. next face of the NFL for the next decade or so. We could have had that guy. We could have had.
Yeah. Yep. There you go.
Pain.
Patrick Mahomes. There's a second option. I mean, really. Continuing on, even when Dombrowski attempted to fix the awful bullpen, his imbecilic manager refused to accept the gift. The absolute mishandling of Joakim Soria is so unforgivable that it defies belief. After acquiring the consensus best available reliever at the deadline, the Tigers proceeded to use him like a Broadway understudy for the remainder of the season, pretty much wrecking him in the process. You will never be able to convince me that Ausmus didn't injure Soria in Toronto on August 9th, when, after not even warming up Soria for days, the neophyte manager rushed him to get ready during another Joe Nathan meltdown. After bailing Nathan out of a jam in the 9th inning, Soria attempted to go back out for the 10th. He wouldn't be seen again for another month, but was lights out in September. His September ERA of 1.35 and whip of 0.45. Yeah, those are way low. Still couldn't get him promoted to the role of setup man or closer, though, until 2015. And then came October. After not pitching for 8 days, Soria was total puke garbage on 2 separate occasions when trying to clean up someone else's mess. That's someone being the guy he should have replaced weeks prior as the go-to 8th inning guy, smelly, stinky, unshaven Chamberlain. Would the reliever whom Dombrowski acquired in exchange for his 3rd and 5th best prospects in his organization been more effective if he had pitched in any of the 3 weekend games differently, if Soria had been allowed to start a clean inning instead of inheriting Jabba's crap sandwiches? I have no clue, but it sure would have been nice to find out. But the Joaquin Soria debacle wasn't even the biggest bullpen travesty during the postseason. That would have been the team's handling of Anibal Sanchez, which totally cost them Game 2 at Camden Yards. Between Nathan, Chamberlain, and Ausmus's abandonment of Albuquerque as a late-inning option, it was abundantly clear to anyone watching this team recently that the Tigers weren't even going anywhere in the playoffs without Sanchez playing a vital role as a reliever. Since Dombrowski refused to step in to ensure Sanchez was available for multiple inning appearances, what did Ausmus do? Even though there were multiple occasions to get the 2013 AL ERA champions some work, he pitched Sanchez once in the final week of the season. Then the Mimbo used Sanchez's lack of thrown pitches as an excuse as to why Sanchez couldn't have at least pitched the 8th inning on Friday afternoon after allowing 0 base runners in 2 innings of work while striking out a pair. In other words, Ausmus created the situation in which Anibal was allowed to throw 30 pitches that day and then used it as a crutch when things predictably hit the fan. Oh, and this might be a good time to mention that limiting a starting pitcher to a pitch count of around 30 after missing 7 weeks is total bull in the first place. Because the Detroit sports media is too lazy to do this sort of research, I have done it for them. Here are just a few examples of game logs of starting pitchers who missed significant time and then returned sans rehab appearances. The Yankees have quite the investment in Masahiro Tanaka. Between the posting fee with his team in Japan and his 7-year contract, the Steinbrenner brothers are on the hook for $175 million. Anyway, as you can see in the above graphic, Tanaka missed 75 days. In his first game back, he threw 70 pitches. Sanchez missed only 49 days. For you sabermetric geniuses, that's 26 fewer, and was limited to 30 tosses? Just 30 pitches? Are you kidding me with this? Brad Ausmus only allowed Sanchez to throw 30 pitches? Wow.
By the way, that's another name to add. I might have missed Max Scherzer as well. So, yeah, Scherzer, Sanchez. Keep listing more talents that were phenomenally wasted by this team.
Definitely.
That was the Dartmouth dummy for you.
Oh.
Yeah. Did I mention that Sanchez only had a pectoral issue while the Yankees were afraid that Tanaka needed Tommy John surgery? Here's another comparison for you. Now, here's the 2013 game log for Jared Weaver. As you can see, Weaver missed 52 days, 3 more than Anibal, and without a rehab assignment, threw 86 pitches in his first start off the disabled list. I could seriously go on all day listing examples of starting pitchers not being treated like stage 4 cancer patients while coming off of injuries, but I will only provide one more. Here's the 2013 game log for potential 2014 AL Cy Young Award winner Corey Kluber from the Cleveland Indians. Corey Kluber missed 33 days of work, and in his first game back, he went 5 innings and threw 64 pitches. Meanwhile, Sanchez was limited to 14 pitches in his first relief appearance back, and then somehow could not pitch the 8th inning of a crucial postseason matchup. Because why? I have no clue why. 14 pitches by Sanchez. Limited to 14 pitches?
And Sanchez was nowhere.
That's crazy.
Sanchez was nowhere near washed at this point, even before he had his resurgence in Washington. Sanchez was still serviceable.
Yes, he was. And Brad Ausmus only allowed him to throw 30 and then 14?
Your season on the line. You're on the verge of getting swept. And you don't go Plan Z. You don't empty out the barracks.
Yeah,
No
right
sense
before
of
the window was
urgency
closing.
whatsoever.
God.
Right. Before the window was closing, Dave
Oh,
Dombrowski brought in the wrong manager. And Mike Ilitch even warned him about it. No joke.
Yes. Even Mike, with his last days, he knew. He even still had apparently more of an idea of what to do or trying to do to make this team a winner, even more than his damn GM did.
Definitely. The Tigers' season pretty much ended because of that nonsensical decision. Of course, it wasn't over until Sunday afternoon when Holiday and Perez failed to score JD from second base. Not that anyone could have predicted the Holiday strikeout or the Hernan double play. Oh, my God. And that was the first of 2 times that Hernan Perez hit into a double play. And then that game against the Kansas City Royals, you ran it about that as well. Hernan Perez, what did he do? He hit into a double play. The Tigers bunted to get to him.
That's what you gave up. That's what you gave up to get in return.
Sons of bitches.
And don't forget the classic term that sometimes will trend on Twitter: Tigers threaten but do not score. That will be a friggin' imprinted quote on my tombstone as a Tigers fan if I never see him win a World Series in my lifetime.
I mean,
it may well be the same for me, too.
If that's going to continue to go on, then, hey, this doesn't even bother me one bit.
Good God. Continue.
Yep. Oh, wait. Yes, pretty much anyone could have predicted that disaster. On September 4th, I wrote an article warning Tigers fans that a situation could occur in the postseason where we needed a catcher to get a hit off of a tough lefty reliever, and there wouldn't be anyone on the roster to deliver due to Ausmus's stubborn refusal to play James McCann. Yep, James McCann wasn't on the playoff roster because he couldn't be trusted to handle the team's starting pitching. I mean, what? Come on.
Even though at this point he was becoming more and more reliable as your starting catcher than Alex Avila.
Right. And even though in that last game he started, McCann caught a Justin Verlander jet. It wouldn't have been a smart baseball move to have McCann up against Britton with a season-saving run on second base instead of Holiday, even though McCann's OPS versus lefties in Toledo was .879. And no one is comparing Eugenio Suarez to either Cal Ripken Jr. or in his prime Nomar Garciaparra with the bat. But why the hell was Hernan pinch hitting in that situation and not Suarez? Perez had 5 at-bats in the majors all season long, and his biggest contribution came from sitting on the damn bench. Self-inflicted wounds. The season was a total cluster from the moment a high school kid tweeted out that Pfister had been dealt to the Nationals, and the misery and aggravation couldn't have ended in a more perfect fashion, with those 2 scrubs deciding our fate. For that reason alone, Dombrowski and Ausmus should be shown the door, and a new era should begin. I am sick and tired of hearing Dombrowski's supposed brilliance and how we won the trade deadline again. Stop owning the Central on July 31st and win a World Series with all your inherent advantages. Yes, thanks to their fans who have shown up at Comerica Park in droves through tough economic times and have religiously tuned into Fox Sports Detroit in record numbers only to be inundated with the grills of the Bernstein barristers. The Tigers have been able to outspend the rest of their divisional competition. In 2014, Detroit had a $70 million payroll advantage over the Royals, and that was before we traded for Soria and David Price at the deadline, while Dayton Moore did nothing. And wouldn't the Ned Yost-led Royals winning the World Series before we do be the final ignominy in a decade of humiliations? And the Royals were just 90 feet away from tying Game 7 of the World Series against the San Francisco Giants. Remember, it was 2 out, a man on third, and they popped out into Pablo Sandoval to end the game. It was 3-2. They could have tied the game.
They got close, almost. Remember, there was, Alex Gordon, I think it was. He hit a double or triple where some people thought maybe he should have gone for the inside the park home run because there was an error in the outfield or something like that. So that's how thrilling and close that Game 7 was.
Yeah, that was a hell of a series, too.
Yeah, and what I remember the most was Madison Bumgarner coming in relief in Game 6 and 7. He was... Yes, he was just phenomenal.
Definitely. Absolutely. In 2013, the Tigers had a $25 million payroll advantage over the next AL Central squad. In 2012, it was $38 million. We have collected Cy Young winners and MVP candidates like a hoarder at an estate sale, and yet we have absolutely nothing to show for it. And please save me the BS about being competitive for a decade of being spoiled for not enjoying the run. Sorry I stuck with this team when they stunk with Central Fielder and Mickey Tettleton, but were fun to watch, and I didn't give up on them when they lost 119 games in 2003. Hell, I went to the last few games of that genocidal season against the Twins. I will watch them if they are good or bad because I am a diehard fan of this organization. Being competitive draws in the fans who didn't know this team existed until Maglio Ordonez and Ivan Pudge Rodriguez came aboard. I want to win a World Series after 30 years of waiting. And if that means being terrible for a couple of years, so be it. I find nothing soothing about this decade-long VIP room lap dance from our baseball team. It has resulted in the biggest blue balls in the world outside of Big Mouth Smurf. And speaking of the Smurfs, how about that pile of human excrement, Danny Gargamel Nobler? You might remember the Knob from his days covering the Tigers for Booth newspapers or his stint at CBSSports.com before he got pink slipped. Well, he has now been relegated to near obscurity working for ESPN New York, but he did have time to insult Tigers fans over the weekend with his complete and utter baloney. At Danny Nobler on Twitter, quote, amazing how Tiger fans have turned into entitled Yankee fans. Season is disaster unless they win the World Series, unquote. We become entitled like Yankees fans. The season is a disaster if we don't win the World Series. We haven't won a ring in 30 years. The Yankees have won 5 championships since Bill Clinton was elected president. The second time, and we are entitled? If you were born in 1980, you probably have zero recollection of the 84 World Series, and yet at 34 years old, you are entitled, according to this dipstick, a man whose wife is supposedly one of those mail-order brides. Yeah, we're entitled. And little orphan Annie was spoiled by Mrs. Hannigan. As DSR number 2, former DSR number 2 now, Justin Spiro tweeted, who has our Michigan_Truth Twitter handle blocked, by the way, you can't spell entitled without title, and it's been longer than a generation since we've won one. And now our last best chance to win a ring has passed without a title. The future is hazy at best, with the precarious health of Mike Ilitch being an unknown factor when it comes to budget. Max Scherzer almost assuredly leaving town. Victor Martinez's status in doubt, and $60 million of payroll being allotted annually to Miggy and JV while they age. And Victor Martinez, by the way, let me pause right there, was signed to a 4-year, $68 million contract extension by Dave Dombrowski and Mike Ilitch. Oh, my God.
Before they got rid of him.
Before he retired.
Wait, I thought you said JD. I'm sorry. You said Victor.
Yeah, it was Victor Martinez. Yeah,
before Victor became corpse smart, and
that was Victor. This was Victor on his literal last legs.
Yeah, for all the great things Dombrowski has done in Detroit, he has still failed to accomplish the one bucket list item Mike Ilitch desired more than anything. And this isn't an Oakland A's fan crying about Billy Beane failing to win a World Series on a shoestring budget while having to reinvent the wheel every season. No, Dombrowski was brought here 12 years ago by Ilitch to win a World Series, not to get embarrassed by a lesser Cardinals team in 2006, blow the division in 2009, get humiliated by the Giants in 2012, or get bested by the Boston Red Sox in 2013 when Jim Leyland could have made smarter decisions. When is his bullpen cost the franchise in 2013 and then do nothing to fix that major issue again the next season in 2014? He's had more than enough time to fulfill his mission and has not been able to do so despite having every advantage at his disposal. So what can we expect from him when his budget is reduced? He is hamstringed by 2 $30 million a year contracts, and the Royals are a credible threat. It's going to take creativity to keep the Tigers relevant. How can we count on an executive who couldn't solve the most fixable issue in baseball, the bullpen, to navigate these troubled waters moving forward? A $70 million plus payroll advantage over the still alive Royals, and your Achilles heel again was the bullpen, not the offense, which was the second in all of baseball, or the armada of Cy Young starters. The bullpen, the engineers of the Death Star who let the most powerful battle station in the galaxy susceptible to a rebel attack because of the thermal exhaust ports. Scoff at Dombrowski's continued failure to address this issue. The team has failed miserably in the area of drafting players who can walk in and contribute with team-friendly, pre-arbitration eligible deals. And it's not like any of the prospects Dombrowski dealt for Miggy, Fister, Sanchez, etc., or Scherzer, who filed for arbitration and signed with the Nationals, have panned out elsewhere, meaning there must be a systemic issue among the Tigers' minor league affiliates. Or going back to the Brandon Finnegan example, it would appear that Texas Christian University does a better job of preparing prospects for the major leagues than does anyone in Lakeland, West Michigan, or Erie, or Toledo. How much more corroboration do we need that this current management team cannot properly train minor league prospects or evaluate high school and collegiate talent before calling it a day? It's been 12 years. Arapahoe County prosecutors have less evidence against Dark Knight Rises theater gunman James Holmes. Dombrowski's final failure in Detroit should be his refusal to intervene in September when his overwhelmed rookie manager, Brad Ausmus, that was then, stubbornly wouldn't play McCann or Tyler Collins, who 2 years later flipped the bird over making an error at the fans, or replaced Jabba with Soria, and finally not giving Sanchez extended work in 2 blowout losses against the Twins. You will notice I haven't spent any time in this article discussing possible ways to fix them. First of all, it's too soon. I am so pissed off and spent from this season that I have no energy to start discussing potential James Shields or Andrew Miller signings. And what would be the point anyway? How much time did I waste suggesting ways to fix the 2014 team, including starting David Price in Game 2, which almost assuredly would have meant the Tigers would still be alive right now? Look, it would not be the first time that Olympia Sports fired a very successful general manager because he couldn't win the big one. Just ask Brian Murray about his failure to acquire a big-time goaltender when he was the GM of the Red Wings. Go out and find a sabermetrically inclined Jewish nerd general manager in the mold of Andrew Friedman, John Daniels, or Theo Epstein. Hire Manny Acta to manage this team and give Pedro Martinez the pitching coach gig, or both. Or keep doing what you're doing, Illich family, because who wouldn't want to be spoiled with the label of being a modern-day version of the early 90s Buffalo Bills, the late 90s Cleveland Indians, and the current version of Mitt Romney? Enough is enough. I could go on and on about the misery this team's management and players inflicted on us, from Dombrowski's awful decision to not qualify Johnny Peralta because, God forbid, if he accepted a one-year $14.1 million deal for a WAR of 5.8, to Andrew Romine's refusal to take an off-speed pitch for the team on Sunday. What a wuss. To this team getting completely shut down by Bud Norris, but what is the freaking point anymore? And of course, this column will get mocked by the dolts who have bought into the Dombrowski narrative that is constantly spun by the national and local media and the bloggers like Bless You Boys, which are fanboys. I mean, how can you fire a GM who has won the AL Central 4 straight times and reached the World Series twice? Ask yourself, is there any way the Red Wings GM could go 12 seasons without winning a cup and keep this gig? If you answer that question no, which is the correct answer, ask yourself why the man's baseball team should be any different. And that's the end of the article. So Dave Dombrowski, again, did not address the bullpen. Look at what the Tigers could have done.
I mean, first and foremost, you want to talk about the bullpen. Like, I can't tell who was a bigger waste of bullpen arm in that. Was it Joaquin Soria or Joaquin Benoit? I can't figure out who, was tragically misused more down the stretch as their time as a Tiger came to an end. Looking back on that article, there's a reason why we do these story vaults, because it gives at least some semblance of bearing to look upon as to why the current team that article is being subjected on is in the current state that it's at right now. And you can see, just reading back on these words, 5, 6, 7 years ago, there's a reason why it was the Tigers are where they're at right now. They wasted their window of opportunity. They made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And the Achilles heel that was staring them right in the face, they did nothing to address, and it came back to bite them in the behind once again.
Yeah, and not to mention, Texas Christian University, like Moss pointed out, had a much better player development system than the Tigers farm system in Grand Rapids, Lakeland, Erie, and Toledo. And think about that. And pretty much everyone still, until like this year, had a better development system for the players than the Tigers organization and its farm system had ever had.
Well,
so there you go.
And if I may, I remember specifically after the disaster of 2014 happened, I wanted Brad Ausmus fired, and everyone said I was crazy. They're saying, give him, it's only 1 year. I knew how well he misused his pitchers, his in-game decisions were bad enough. Well, keep in mind, long after he leaves, booted from the Tigers, he goes to Anaheim to manage the Angels. How long did he last there? 1 year. So, yes, you can fire your manager after 1 year.
Especially after he wastes the talent of arguably the best baseball player on the entire planet Earth.
Yes. Poor Mike Trout.
Yeah.
So
kind Kind of like poor Connor McDavid with Ken Holland.
Exactly. Yes. And I do remember, and also kind of going back to the last paragraph in that article, would the Red Wings keep their GM if he goes 12 years without winning a Stanley Cup? Well, that was a little bit of foreshadowing on Moss's part, as they did not keep their GM after not winning a cup for 11 years, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and definitely the Red Wings finally won a cup in 1997, and then they won back-to-back in 98 before winning a cup in 02 and winning a cup in 08. They came close to winning a cup in 09, but that's what broke them. And he had to go on, and that's what broke the Wings. And then Ken Holland continued to hold on to his GM role, bouncing Steve Yzerman to Tampa Bay, and that was continuing for about a decade before Yzerman would come back, and Chris Ilitch would fire Ken Holland and bring Steve Yzerman back as executive vice president and GM, while Ken Holland hit the road and took the Edmonton Oilers GM gig. So there you go. So our closing statement, we'll go over to Ed and then Frank. Ed, what is your closing statement?
My closing statement for this week would be the fact that at last we are seeing the return of Michigan football. It has been far too long. It's been far too long of a wait, far too long of a break. And frankly, given the circumstances that we're at right now, I understand fully of the pandemic that's going on. I understand fully that, quite frankly, this may not be the smartest or the safest thing to do at this current place and time, or rather under the right circumstances and scenarios. There's always a safe way to do things done, see the NBA and NHL, and even UFC, for example. But I digress. Knowing what's around the corner, knowing I can see, my favorite college team kick off a new season with another new goal freshly in mind, as the same as everyone else, and also seeing what the Lions usually do in September, which is basically break my hopes before they even began. I'll say it's good to see some good football again. Go Blue.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Frank, now it's your turn.
My closing statement tonight is going to pay homage to a legend who has decided to hang it up. Earlier this week, Mike Emmerich, better known as Doc, around the NHL community, and by those of us who have watched the NHL on NBC, has decided to hang up his microphone after being in the business of covering hockey for almost 50 years, which it's a long time, and that takes a lot of dedication to do something. And as someone who grew up hearing Doc do play-by-play and even doing a little bit here and there in my college days, and even doing some public address as well, and having some big games to be on the mic for, I kind of use Doc as one of my role models. And that's not just because that he resides in this great state of Michigan, but the way he conducted himself on the air and also away from it as well. He wasn't just a great announcer, but he was a great person as well. And that's someone who, like I said, I modeled myself after. And to know that he did what he did for almost 50 years shows the desire and dedication that you need to have in a job like that, or anything that you like to do. If you want to be tenured at something, you got to love what you do. Whether that's coaching, whether that's working on cars, whether that's practicing law, whether you're in the medical field, any job at all, you have to have dedication. And so, to Doc Emmerich, who lives in St. Clair with his wife Joyce and their dogs and horses, on behalf of myself, Taylor, and Ed, and Darren, we would like to say thank you. Thank you for what you have brought to hockey, for what you've brought into our homes, especially during this pandemic when you were calling games from your very own home as well. Thank you for just not being a great announcer, but just a great person as well, and setting an example for those who wish to follow in your footsteps. Thank you, Doc. You will be missed.
Well said. You've earned your retirement. You've earned your rest.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. And Doc Mike Emmerich taught me. I learned from while I was hearing him call play-by-play a lot of articulate vocabulary as he called the game. And not only did it teach me even more vocabulary, it taught me what those words meant. He was such a brilliant play-by-play announcer for hockey for so many years. And he was more down the middle and more like a realist, like Ernie Harwell when he called play-by-play for the Tigers. He was the Ernie Harwell of NHL on TV. The Ernie Harwell
you couldn't. Sorry, Taylor, you could have not said that any better, my man. I mean,
because I remember growing up listening to Ernie Harwell on the radio and on TV, and he was the master of calling baseball. Mike Emmerich, the master of calling hockey.
I mean, there's a full HBO Real Sports segment dedicated to Mike almost solely for that reason. His way with words, the way he was almost inventive and fresh and original with his sayings and his alliterations. You don't see that very often, especially for someone who did it as long as he did. So hats off to the man. Hats off to him, and a round of applause. Well respect.
Yes, definitely. My closing statement, glad college football is back in the min. Plus, you got the Lions and Falcons. I think it's going to be unpredictable. We have an even panel predicting this one, Lions or Falcons, whoever. And then we discussed the Tigers 2014 finish. Oh, man. We can keep on remembering all this until they won a World Series with smart management and stuff like that. So, before we go, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports app called VigIt, which influences more and more people to love sports. Enter the referral code STABLES with a capital S. Download the VigIt app and enter the referral code STABLES. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. We were all on fire. That concludes another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, primetime edition on Stables Media. We'll be back next week for Ed Smith, Frank Vasner, and on behalf of Darren Weiss, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN. Ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. Hit it with a high. We rest our case. Stay safe.
The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.